It's Supercards and Shuffleboard. Sports excitement in the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Hello, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Welcome back. This is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. I'm your humble host, Bob Smith. God, what a boring name. Not much like it. My parents have named me Bartholomew or something. You know, it's just Bob Smith. Oh. You ever heard George Carlin's bit about names and dating? I won't say anything more than that. But anyway, welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. And we're glad to have you back. And today's show is about nothing but fun. Right? This is a FUN show. We're not going to talk about nothing serious, but we have a great guest, Anthony Pires, who you may remember from our trivia contest show. But he's been making the rounds of many different kinds of wrestling podcasts, and he's going to join us for a nice, upbeat discussion today. Just fun. If you don't remember Anthony, listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour presented by Bob Smith, available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify and iTunes among them. Bill Apter is a good friend. Bob invented the PWI 500. He played music with B.B. King. Stanley Weston was his former boss. And the magazines that Bob Smith presided over: Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Inside Wrestling, The Wrestler, various quarterlies, and my name is Geomacu.
Right. That was Anthony. As I used it as our comedy lead for a recent podcast, and his spot-on imitation of Joe McHugh, the old WWF announcer, ring announcer, I should say. And Anthony's got a million memories, and I got a million memories. We're going to contrast and compare in front of y'all, and I hope you're going to enjoy this. So you've heard him before on the show a couple of times, and he's back, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We hope you have fun too, but you're going to have to wait because we're going to have a little public service announcement here, and then we're going to get on to the great Anthony Pires. So as soon as you hear this 30 seconds of hype, then you're going to hear Anthony and me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wrestling Fans International Association is back. That's right, the premier fan club association of the 1970s and 1980s has been revived and is back in business. Join today. It's free at thewfia.org. That's thewfia.org. You can also join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/WFIA 1969.
That, my friends, is an example of the humor and amazing creativity of one of the most amazing guys I've met since starting wrestling podcasting. He's all over the wrestling scene. He's probably the world's biggest New England Patriots fan. As I sit here talking to him now, he has a New York Yankees logo on a championship belt from WWE. He's got his fingers in more pies than Entman's. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Pires, welcome back.
Bob Smith, it is a pleasure to talk to you. This is Joe McHugh. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Everything is hunky-dory around here, and we're really happy to have you back here.
I'm so thrilled to be back here. Since the last time I was on your show, I cleaned up. Almost a clean sweep. in the Bob Smith's Outdated Wrestling Hour trivia contest. No offense, Liam Savage, I did beat you like a rented mule.
Poor, don't do that to poor Liam. You know, he felt bad about. He thought he did so poorly. I thought he did great. I think he did just fine.
Well,
This contest was meant to be kind of challenging, as you recall.
It was fun for me because I kicked copious amounts of butt. Bob, it's a pleasure. Bob, it's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. And the reason I'm having you here is just you're a lot of fun, and I want to know more about you. I met you through the John Rizzi podcast, and now you're here, and I want you to just tell people what you do in and around the wrestling business, and just give yourself a good introduction. How's that?
Listen, Bob, in addition to being the single greatest husband and lover imaginable, I am an amazing father, but more importantly, I am the host. Luckily, Corey Strode probably won't hear this, but I am the host of the PWInsiderElite.com AEW post-show party on PW Insider every Wednesday night about midnight. My buddy and myself, Corey Strode, we break down Dynamite each and every week, going on 4 years now. We actually have our own T-shirt now on ProWrestlingTees.com. I am a regular contributor to Conrad Thompson's Top Guys on AdFreeShows.com. I'm at almost all of his Zoom calls, and you've seen a lot of my Facebook posts and my pictures. I am one of those guys that got into wrestling at 7.5 years old and never broke out of it in any way, shape, or form. I've never wavered my fandom. So, and I was the biggest collector of Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine during the 80s and 90s.
Well, you're a genius. No, but yeah, and I appreciated the guys back then too. Believe me, you put bologna on my table. We'll put it that way. So I appreciate that.
Proud to do it.
So you have never wavered in your wrestling fandom at all.
Never. If you go back to 1988, when I first started having pay-per-view parties in my basement, there was about 8 or 9 of us. All of them in some way, shape, or form still keep up today through me, but they've all faltered as big fans. I never have. I absolutely never have. I'm proud to say I have seen every single WWE, Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, and AEW pay-per-views. Maybe not live, all of them, but I've seen them all within the first week or two they were out.
Awesome. Let me ask you, I'm older than many kinds of soil, but you're a little younger than I am. But what is your favorite era? I mean, was it the first wrestling you ever saw? Because lately I've been real nostalgic for the stuff I saw when I was a wee tadpole, the old Pedro Martinez, the old Triple WF. How about you? Do you have a favorite era?
Well, I think everyone loves what they grew up on when they thought it was real.
Right.
So I will say to myself, the greatest era of my life was probably 81 to 85, because you got to bear in mind, 81 to 85 was Andre the Giant, Bob Backlund, the early Hulk Hogan championship run, Roddy Piper, and Georgia Championship Wrestling. Once my father finally stopped being a cheapskate and got cable, I was able to enjoy it.
Boy, you know something? You bring back memories. I moved from upstate New York to Westchester. Oh, what year was this? Early 80s. And it was the first time I ever had access to TBS. And, the NWA back then.
Right.
Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone on the list. And it felt like getting let out of jail. I always wanted to have access to the program, and I finally did. And you're right. When you finally see something new like that, it's like, boing, this is great.
I was lucky because back around 82, my grandfather, who was a huge... Ready for this story, Bob? My grandparents on my mother's side saw with their own eyes a Stan Stasiak title defense.
Really?
Yep, they went to... There was a place in North Attleboro, Massachusetts called Jack Witchy's Arena.
I've heard of it, right.
The night before he lost the belt to San Martino, they were at Witchy's Arena, and they saw him defend. I think they told me he was going to Chief J Strongbow, where Strongbow beat him on a disqualification. But they were one of the few, the proud, the many, that saw Stan Stasiak defend the WWF title. So, forward 12 years, when I become a wrestling fan, my grandfather already discovered world-class championship wrestling. Mm-hmm. So I was able to follow the Von Erichs from like 82 on. So it was incredible times, Bob. So I easily 81 to 85 was, I could tell you everything about that time.
Sure. And you know what? That was a golden time too, because at that point, later on, I was able to, I was seeing World Class. World Class was on wherever I went. Mm-hmm. Even when I came to New York, I forget how I was seeing it, but it was definitely on cable. It's true. The cable era, which was right about then when it really started to get popular, right. All of a sudden you weren't stuck with your home territory anymore. You could watch WCW or Texas or the AWA on ESPN or all that other stuff.
And I'll tell you this, Bob, during 1983, I stopped watching WWE and only watched World Class because they had top matches. They had the Von Erichs, who were the coolest guys in the world. Rest in peace to all those guys. Mm-hmm. They were amazing, but it wasn't until Hulk Hogan, it wasn't until the Iron Sheik beat Bob Backlund that I got back into WWF.
Because of the Iron Claw, I went and saw the film. Did you see it?
Absolutely. Amazing.
Because of that, I went and dug up some old prime world-class video, and I'll tell you what, that organization had a flavor unlike anything else in the country. They were red hot with all the Von Erich brothers. I mean, it was major league.
It was my jam. When I was a kid making championship belts out of construction paper, it wasn't the WWF title. It was the NWA title that I defended religiously against the Von Erichs.
There you go. Hey, did you know at the Peterborough offices we had I think it was an inter-office championship also made of cardboard? Apter had it most of the time. I was never able to win the championship.
Bill,
I wasn't even in the top 10. I don't know what I did wrong.
I did a podcast. I did a Zoom call with Bill Apter, who still has the office championship title belt. It's in Apter's Alley. It's in Apter's Alley. He showed it to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bill's one of a kind, and he's something else. Still out there doing it too, covering stuff here and there and everywhere. He's an amazing guy. I love Bill. Getting to know Bill was such a thrill back in those days. I don't talk about that enough. Bill Apter was the backbone of that company, and without him, there would be no PWI. I'll tell you that now.
They don't call them the Weston mags. They're the Apter mags.
Right.
Because he was just the face. He was the guy we identified with. Bill Apter was the guy we all wanted to be. He was at ringside with the camera. He was interviewing people on TBS.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He was the guy. He was writing about it. You know what? A lot of my friends, they wanted to be Dan Marino. They wanted to be Reggie. I wanted to be Bill Apter. I wanted to be at ringside.
Well, I always tell the story too about getting the job. What a fluke, dude. I mean, who got me the job at PWR was Mike Tyson, because I wrote an article about Mike Tyson in my hometown that won a major journalism award. And what better fodder do you give a wrestling and boxing magazine company than an award-winning article and a resume, right? So
right.
I think Mike Tyson literally made my career in terms of sports. It opened up doors for me all over the place.
What was the last time you talked to him?
Mike?
Yeah.
This is a funny story. I ran into him in Manhattan. I was just walking down the street, and he's walking the other direction, and I go, Mike. He goes, Bob. I mean, you got to remember, in my first newspaper, it was right across from the Catskill Boxing Club, which was over the police station on Main Street in Catskill, New York, right? I could wander in and out anytime I wanted. And to me, the greatest memory I have of any sport was just going in and watching him work out. He was an incredible athlete. And so I see him in Manhattan. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, I live here. I live in New York City now. And we talked and we hugged. And then I turned around and there's about 250 people in a circle around us. He says, I better go. I said, I understand why. See you soon. That's the last I saw him.
My father saw like his 5th pro fight in Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was out.
The Tomato Can of the Month Club, right? Remember he was fighting every month?
Oh, God. When he was knocking guys out in 45 seconds.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And later on, I did get to see him at WrestleMania 14. So my father and I both saw Mike Tyson in person.
One of my great sports thrills was covering one of his early fights at the Garden, sitting next to all the press, all the guys I've written, I'm sitting next to Sports Illustrated. I'm working for the Catskill Daily Mail. Sports Illustrated's over here, and the Ring is over there. All the writers I admired were in that building, seeing him and the undercard of. I can't remember the fight now.
What year?
Oh gosh.
I was a big boxing fan back in those days.
84, 85?
Was it Roberto Duran? Oh God!
I think you're right. Can't remember the opponent.
Roberto Duran beat the guy for the title, and 2 days later, the guy dies in a motorcycle accident.
No, this wasn't that one.
Okay,
this was definitely not that one.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Yes, yeah, but I can't remember who. All I remember is the Tyson fight. You see how myopic I was because I was I was there to cover that primarily.
Hell, my father took me to see Hagler.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Hagler.
Are you kidding me? And the guys from the paper went and saw Hagler Hearns on pay-per-view. Remember, you'd have to go closed circuit to see that stuff. The greatest, one of the great sporting events, even though I wasn't even there. Just watching it, it was magical.
All you kids out there, that fight's on YouTube. That was the greatest 8 minutes of fighting you will ever see in your life.
No question about it. Oh my gosh! If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. You're right, Anthony, because people were leaping out of their seats.
They trained for 6 months for that fight. They had strategy. They had this. They had that. They had defense, offense. As soon as that bell rang, they threw a punch. They're like, oh, really? Is this what we're doing? Okay. It was just nothing but action.
Right.
That's what I miss so much about boxing. That's what I miss so much.
That's what you dream about in a boxing match. That started exactly like that. I've never seen a better match. I didn't care how long it went. That first round made the whole doggone thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, the second, third round weren't bad either. Great stuff. Great stuff.
I just remember never being in any sporting event amongst a more delirious crowd. Mm-hmm. Everybody was off the edge of their seats. It was just incredible. I mean, wow. I guess we had press passes for that. That's right. We had a press pass to see a closed circuit event, but I'm glad it happened because, jeez.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I know this is a wrestling podcast, but it's amazing what happened to the sport of boxing, isn't it?
It is. It's just falling right off the cliff. You know why? We don't have a Mike Tyson now. We don't have a Muhammad Ali. We don't have a Joe Frazier. We don't have that heavyweight attraction that brings people out to see boxing. And I can't name the champions now. Can you?
I know that Tyson Fury is your heavyweight champion of he has 7 of the 9 belts I recognize. So doesn't matter.
Yeah, I stepped away from that too. So what can I say? Well, in any event, back to wrestling.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're on a wrestling show.
We're on a wrestling show. We better get back to it. We're going to have people switching off like Now, I have a question. We're going back to World Class Days, and this is a nostalgia podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Were you always an East Coast guy? Were you a WWF person?
I discovered WWF in the spring of '81 on a rainy day when Saturday morning cartoons were over. I can tell you right now, Bob, the very first match I ever saw was on Championship Wrestling, presented by Joe McHugh. Andre the Giant, Tony Gurria, and Rick Martel in a 6-man tag team match. And from that day on, I was an East Coast WWF fan. And about a month later, oh my God, the Moondogs beat them for the tag team title, and I went absolutely insane.
Okay, yeah. I go back to 72.
Oh, well, I don't want to make you feel old.
No,
actually,
that's the idea. The idea of this podcast is that people know I'm older than potting soil. So it's like, it's
born.
Yeah, but I got to see Fred Blassie work. I got to see. I got to see Don Leo Jonathan. I got to see Gorilla Monsoon. I got to see
only memory
Chief J Strongbow. Let me tell you something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Early Chief J Strongbow. People know him from the 80s. Oh, the blubbery Indian, and he was terrible. No, he wasn't. If you saw Strongbow between 72, when they reinvented him from Joe Scarpa, to about 75, he was it. Well, he was number 2 babyface, no matter who was champion. He was red friggin' hot. I always say he was the Jimmy Snuka of his era. Like just an eyelash below the championship type of guy. That was Strongbow. I'm telling you, when he went wild, when he lost his temper, it was something.
And did the war did.
Yes.
I will tell you this right now. One of my second earliest favorite tag team, Chief J and Jules Strongbow.
Mm-hmm.
Their feud with Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito was absolutely the bomb. And I rooted for them because Fuji and Saito, remember, ultimately beat Gurria and Martel for the tag team title. So when somebody stepped up to the plate to challenge them, I was all in. I freaking loved Chief J and Jules Strongbow.
Mm-hmm. Now, Fuji Saito, I think they beat Gurria and Martel by throwing salt in Martel's eyes, if I recall. Do you remember that? I mean,
absolutely.
It's big handful of salt, wham, right in the face.
Poor
and
Rick
McMahon
Martel
was losing his mind, yeah. Pure assault, look at Martel,
But I remember December 26th, 1983, Providence Civic Center, Providence, Rhode Island. My dad took me to see the big rematch. Jay and Jules Strongbow. I'm sorry, Rick Martel, Tony Gurria against Fuji and Saito. Maybe the match wasn't as good as I remember, but there are things that as a person you never forget. And I was 8. I'm 51 right now, Bob. I remember how good that match was, how excited. Bob, I cried when those dastardly Japanese heels beat Gurria and Martel in the rematch. It broke my heart.
I believe it.
And luckily, Bob Backlund beat Jesse Ventura later on in the main event.
Well, back then the promoters had a way of not letting you walk away angry. They knew where their bread was buttered.
Yep.
You will never see an old WWF event where all the heels won. Impossible.
Never.
It didn't work that way.
Well,
I'm from the Albany area. Our local matches there. It was such a babyface territory up there in Albany. I mean, they were attacking the heels' cars and stuff like that for a while up there. They were serious good guy fans.
That's what made the WWF so different, was the fact that, back in the territory days, it was a heel territory.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have your Gino Hernandez's, your Tully Blanchard, your Buzz Sawyers all winning the local titles so the babyface hero could chase them. In the Northeast, we worshipped Sammartino, Morales, Backlund, and then Hogan before everything changed over.
Mm-hmm. And you know who gets short shrift? And we talked about Tony Gurria. Tony Gurria was over.
Oh, God, was he ever?
Yeah.
Was he ever?
Yes, he was over. And I'll tell you what, I believe, at least in some cities, he was the first person to get a title shot against Graham.
Oh,
I was there for one of those matches, yeah.
Oh. Tell you what, he was up in my earliest days, and as I look back and watch the matches, he was the babyface in peril who would sell to get the hot tag to Martel. Now, this was 5 years after Graham was champion, but I could absolutely see him being the top contender, the guy who would challenge Graham for the title.
I'll tell you what, could he sell? Who sold better than Tony Gurria, right?
Other than Ricky Morton, I don't think you're going to find anybody else.
And I'll tell you what, I was around in 72 when he first made his debut in the WWF, and I'll say this, I have never seen a bigger guy do a higher drop kick.
Yep.
He was he gave up doing drop kicks after a while, but in the beginning he was a drop kick specialist and he could get up there. He was quite the athlete. He really was. So he is crazily underrated in the eyes of history. He was a very good wrestler, and he was over the whole time he was there.
And by the way, that credit to that guy, I think he kept his job as an agent until he retired in like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
He was a big advocate. The McMahons were big advocates of his.
Yes. Well, he a lifer. He was a lifer there. I don't know if he came directly from Australia or if that's how it worked out. But he did travel the country, but he always came back to the WWF. So he was like Cicluna and Danucci and other guys. They always came back wherever they went.
As Joe McHugh would say, from the Isle of Malta, Baron Michael Cicluna. And he never, his face never broke. He just had that smug, arrogant.
Yes, but you know what about Joe McHugh though? He always called him Baron Miguel Cicluna.
Miguel, yes.
When it was with a K.
Yeah.
And I think it's to Mike's credit, he never corrected him. Because that went on for years. He called him Miguel.
See, I only knew Baron Cicluna as a jobber. I only knew, so you knew him as as a tag team champion.
He was a tag team champion and an actual title contender, and he actually won the East Coast tag team champion twice if you count the old U.S. belts in 1966 that he won with Smasher Sloan. So he actually won that one, and in '72 he came back and teamed with Kid Curtis with a vicious tag team. Foreign Objects Akimbo. It was all over the place. No, he was better. He was better than people. See, here's the problem: people only know what they see, and they see him losing on YouTube, and they think that's all he ever did, which is not true. He just decided to stay there.
You know what the first live match I ever saw was?
Tell me.
The Duke of Dorchester, Pete Doherty, losing to the unpredictable Johnny Rodz. And Bob, I got to tell you something. After being a fan for about 6 months and seeing Rodz lose on TV every week, I was freaked out that Rodz won a match live in living color.
One of the great mysteries in my wrestling life is why Johnny Rodz never got a serious push. What did he ever do wrong? He was fantastic in the ring.
In the 70s, he would have been what a contender he would have been.
Yes, I don't understand. There's certain things about the sport I'll never understand. Now, when he went to California as Javarook, he got a little bit of a push. But
do you think Johnny Rodz fell into the trap of he was so good at getting people over that they couldn't put him over because he was so good at what he did?
I think that he was looked upon. If he was happy doing what he was doing and knew his role and was happy with, let's say, the money and the lack of, contendership, maybe it was just a mutual agreement that this is cool, I like doing it, and I'll just keep going with it. I mean, he was there a long time. He was there since the 60s.
And if you think about it, he trained Peter Sinerka, a.k.a. Taz.
Right.
And Taz's boy had one hell of a match last Wednesday against Samoa Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't he train? He trained at Dudley's too, I believe. Mm-hmm. At least one of them. Mm-hmm. Right?
He trained Bubba Ray Dudley. Right. And I think Devon went to him for finishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's more. I wish I had a list of the people he trained, because I know he's probably responsible for 45, 50 people that the fans know that became named wrestlers.
Now, Bob, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a modern day question.
Uh-oh.
Serious question. Who are the guys and women, by the way, because there are some amazing women out there.
Yes,
who are some of the men and women who get you to tune in? Like, for example, let's say Anthony Pires texts you. Let's say Anthony Pires texts you tomorrow or Wednesday on Dynamo or Tonight on Raw and says, "Hey, Bob, X is wrestling. Tune in right now." Who would that be?
Rhea Ripley.
I knew you'd say Rhea Ripley. Oh my God.
She's injured now, but Charlotte Flair.
Yep.
Becky Lynch. These are my favorites. These are my favorite current wrestlers. Gunther.
Oh, Gunther's great.
Awesome. That's old school right there. He's the last of the old school.
God, imagine the money he would have drawn with either Baszler or Hogan back in the day.
No kidding.
Imagine the money he would have drawn. He is a monster.
You know what I always
Having met him, he's the nicest guy.
He's the new Killer Kowalski.
Oh,
think about that for a minute.
What a great comparison.
I always think it every time I see him. He's the new Killer Kowalski. Kowalski was scientific but mean. It's the same with Gunther.
My grandparents came over from Poland. They worshipped Kowalski. They
Really?
worshipped him. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why? Because he was such a mean guy.
Because he was Polish. He was Polish.
Okay. Fair enough.
They came over from Poland. My grandfather went back and fought the Nazis, and they absolutely loved Killer Kowalski.
There you go. I'd never dreamed. When you and I were kids, people went to wrestling to see their favorite stars defeat the awful rule breakers.
Right.
Now, but you have to admit, now the kids go to wrestling booking in their heads as they're watching. They're saying this guy isn't being used properly, and if they take a pin on TV, he's being buried and all this other stuff. The way people look at wrestling and wrestling fans look at wrestlers is entirely different than when you and I were kids.
Here's a big change. About 2 months ago, I don't know if you follow. Do you follow AEW at all?
Out of one eye, yes.
Okay.
Because they do a lot of stuff I don't agree with, but that's just me.
All right. About 3 months ago, Swerve Strickland, who is a great talent, an amazing talent, he broke into. I'm using air quotes. He broke into Adam Hangman Page's house and threatened his baby in the crib. That made him a bigger babyface to the AEW crowd. And back in the day, man, that would have caused a riot. Me, 10-year-old Anthony would have running to the barricade to beat that guy up.
Agreed.
It's amazing what passes for a babyface now. The guy is more popular than ever, having broken into a child's nursery and threatening a baby's life.
I can't even. I can't even imagine that being part of an angle, to be honest with you. I can't imagine it. See, there's the thing. Boundaries get broken a lot. Well, here's the deal. I just had a wonderful young lady named Kimmy Sokol on. I don't know if you know Kimmy, but she's.
Yes, I do know her. Yes.
Yeah, of course you do.
I think she's actually. Oh, Kimmy Sokol actually, I believe, covers Ring of Honor on PW Insider.
Yes, that's true. That's exactly right. So we had a discussion about things that I didn't agree with modern wrestling, like the aerial spots where a guy's standing on the top of the ring for like a minute and a half, and other guys are standing with their arms in the air waiting to catch him for over 40 seconds. And I said, I expressed my distaste for that, and she didn't understand why I was upset about that. You see what I mean? It's a difference in the generations and how wrestling's been presented. I can't damn these kids for liking AEW because, well, it's what they have. It's their show. Yeah. That's their show. It's the new generation show.
It's a generation gap that I don't quite get. But, God, you and I have both seen the modern product when these guys 8 guys will stand there waiting for a guy to jump on them. And it's spectacular. And the guys that can jump off the top rope like that guy Commander, like Elijah Del Vikingo, like Darby Allin, it looks spectacular, but it doesn't work for modern wrestling. In a lot of ways, doesn't work for me because it's not realistic.
That's exactly right. The suspension of belief goes away very quickly, and that's the problem.
Yep.
First of all, we've had very broad characters that were just ridiculous, and I'm not going to name any names. So that looks like a show. It looks like a show.
Name them. Come on.
I am of the opinion, and I think he's a Hall of Famer and one of the great wrestlers of our time. But I honestly think the Undertaker character did more damage to pro wrestling than anything I can think of. Because,
God. Come on,
because this was the first wrestling superstar to come on the air, and everything about him was absolutely fake.
True. Okay.
Or you see what I'm saying? It was a fantasy character. there were matches where there were, buried alive matches and him dying in a coffin at one point, and you know what I'm saying? It was so extreme in terms of fantasy characters as opposed to sporting event that I'm like, what's going to happen next? How far can we stretch this stuff?
I was in Providence at the 1994 Royal Rumble where he ascended to the heavens.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say this.
I will not rest in peace.
I will say this to you, Bob. In the hands of anybody else, The Undertaker was a one-year gimmick. Mark Calloway made it work. Can we at least agree on that?
I absolutely agree. And I love the American Badass thing because that was the changeover I was waiting for.
And that was
you're right. His work in the ring superseded any stupid thing they came up with him to do. Now, but here's the deal. And here's another part that I thought was damaging. You're going to see that in the middle of a show. That casket match, right?
Right.
How can you take a championship match 2 matches later seriously after that?
Well, bear in mind, that night, that was the championship match. And I will tell you this. I will say this, having been in the building that night. The Providence Civic Center ate that up because we believed in Mean Marcalis as a character, as a wrestler. We completely believed in what he was doing. The place, I'll tell you what, there was a sold-out Providence Civic Center. Nobody booed. Nobody said this is stupid. We're like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? Right. If this was Terry Taylor playing the Undertaker, we would have probably thought the way you did.
Right.
But that guy made it work completely. I won't get it. I won't get into the Undertaker versus. Yeah.
But there's the thing. Strip away all the corny stuff they made him do. He was a fantastic ring worker. Big and strong and tall and powerful and a rope walker and everything else, a unique presence no matter what his guise was. He's as good as anybody who ever stepped in the ring. I will not take that away from him. Not at all.
And if you told me that 1989 to 1990 Mean Mark was going to be an immortal wrestler, I'd say you're out of your freaking mind. The guy has nothing. Has nothing.
Yeah, I remember him in Memphis too.
Well, by the time he got to Memphis and Texas, they were off the syndicated. They were off the syndicated
right.
shows.
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw him in WCW or NWA, it's like, okay, he's a big guy with zero personality. When he walked out, and by the way, one of the biggest regrets of my life, bear in mind, I live in Rhode Island. Hartford, Connecticut is 2 hours away. I did not go to Survivor Series 90. God, I should have done that just to be at the Undertaker's first match. I would have absolutely eaten that up.
Wow. I was, one of my early guests on the show was a preliminary wrestler named Broadway Sonny Blaze.
Absolutely. Broadway.
Yes, everybody loved Broadway. And I'll tell you what, he told the story about being one of the first matches against The Undertaker. He said he was so new, they had pins holding his costume together when he was in the ring. And he told a great story about them, talking together and how they developed a friendship. That was one of my favorite moments on the show is to learn about stuff like that, because, he wrestled when he was so new. Like I said, his uniform wasn't finished yet. His costume was not done yet. Yep. So that's the cool stuff that you can only learn. Sometimes it takes a prelim guy to have memories like that,
Bob, I want to hear a story from you. You told us, you've said that you were one of the first commentators of ECW. I want to know your first impressions of ECW.
Okay, when I was there in the beginning?
Yeah, please. Okay. I want to hear it.
This is a cool story. And, I had Todd Gordon on to talk about it too. Go back to Tri-State Wrestling.
Joel Goodhart, yep.
Right. But one of his backers was, and always there was Todd Gordon.
Yep.
It was a big show. I believe this was the show where it was a steel cage match with the Sheik versus Abdul the Butcher. And I'm there early. So I'm kind of hanging in this area. It wasn't the locker room, but it was like an adjacent room to the locker room. And Todd Gordon is there. And he goes, we had just introduced ourselves to each other. And we sat down and he said, do you like he said to me just out of the blue, he said, do you like the WWF? I said, yeah, but, psychology's all wrong. He goes, yeah. And we started to talk and talk and talk and talk. And after 10 minutes, it felt like I knew him for 20 years. Because we both felt that wrestling was becoming too homogenized and it was too gimmicky. You know, there was just the Duke the Dumpster and Matilda the Bulldog era. Okay,
that was the era where they were doing just jobs, right? Like the Goon, the Dumpster, the Plumber.
Stuff. Everybody was a very broad character. Todd didn't like that. He wanted to bring Memphis style wrestling to the East Coast. That was his whole concept between. I should call it, Eastern Championship Wrestling, he called it in the beginning.
At the time, yep.
Yes. So I continued to follow, Joel's thing until he went out of business promptly or surprisingly. He kind of vanished and there was no more Tri-State.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he go out of business like 1 week before the Buddy Rogers, Buddy Landell match?
I don't know if it was a week before, but that they were selling tickets for it when they decided to pull the plug on the whole thing.
From reading a certain magazine that a certain friend of mine was the managing editor of, I was excited to see that match go down.
I was there at that press conference. I took those pictures that you saw.
Yep.
It was I was excited about it too. So anyway, this all blows over, and a little while later, Todd Gordon is forming Eastern Championship Wrestling, and he calls me, and he goes, "I got all these tapes. We did these tapes with they had already started Eastern Championship Wrestling, but they didn't have TV. But they recorded tapes with Dick Graham doing play-by-play who used to do Philadelphia WWF."
Right.
And he goes, I want to do wraparounds on this new show idea I have for cable public access here in Philadelphia. And it was called Channel 7. Would you like to host the show? And I went, why me? Why? He says, I saw you on Savoldi's show doing some stuff. You look pretty good. Why don't you give it a shot with us? So I was literally their first TV host.
Right.
For this little show. We did interviews with the wrestlers and stuff like that. And we had a blast. It was great. I did several episodes in Philadelphia. I was taking the train Amtrak from New York to Philadelphia every Saturday morning. We would do this. Did that for quite a while, and then he decided to try me out as a full-blown announcer for play-by-play. So I'm sitting there, and he had Stately Wayne Manor from Wrestling World Magazine as my color commentator. He was hilarious. He was great.
I remember him. Yep, I remember him.
Yep, and we get through this long card, and Snooker was on it, and all these other stars were on it, and Koloff had a bloody chain match. It was pretty good.
Ivan or Nikita?
Ivan.
Okay.
Ivan Koloff. But at the end of the thing, I pull my chair back and I go, "You ain't got it." I'm saying to myself, "You don't have it, man. You don't have it. Your voice is all wrong." I thought my voice was too high. I didn't think I was, more broadcasty than I just didn't feel like I was the guy for the job. And then very rare does a person get that type of an opportunity and get critical about themselves. So I go to Todd after a couple of these things, and I said, I think you can do better than me. No offense, I really appreciate the shot, but yeah, you can do better than me. So, cut to 30 years later. The WWE Network puts on remember they used to have a thing, I think it was called Hidden Gems, section in the old network.
Yep.
And they made a videotape out of the matches that we called at the Chestnut Cabaret in Philadelphia for the earliest ECW. And I watch these matches and I go, it wasn't that bad.
You have an amazing voice, my friend. You have an amazing voice.
I'm watching. I go, it isn't that bad. And we had funny banter because, Stately Wayne was kind of a heel commentator. We were arguing the whole time, and it flowed, and it worked, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be. And so I finally get Todd on the show to talk about his book when it was coming out. He said it was fine. He said, you did great. And I'm like, you know what, though? It wasn't all that long later, maybe 8, 9, 10 months later, that Paul Heyman starts working for ECW, which is now Extreme Championship.
Yeah.
We're about to become Extreme Championship Wrestling. And Joey Styles was working at PWI doing articles for us at that point. And people don't realize that. At one point, I see them talking together, and they go into our conference room, which had glass all around it, and they were talking a mile a minute at each other. And I'm thinking to myself, Joey Styles is going to be the next announcer for Paul Heyman, and he was.
You said that back in the day.
I turned around after somebody said, "Look at them going in there." You know, they were so animated talking to each other. I could tell they were bouncing concepts off each other. And I'm like,
oh, Joey was the right voice.
He was born to do it. And I'll tell you what, he knew. Joey is one of the most brilliant wrestling people that ever walked through that office while I was there. And I don't mean that to slight anybody I worked with. I just saw the guy knew everything. He knew everything, and he had his own original style, and I've never been so happy to walk away from a job because the right guy finally got it, and it was Joey Styles. He was magnificent. He was a Wrestling Observer announcer of the year for many years, and you know what? Proof's in the pudding. I'm happy with the way things worked out. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've talked about it on the show before, and you know what? Those were happy days. And you know what? I went and saw an ECW card after he had taken over. And they didn't know I was going to be there. They put me in a hotel room. Joey walks in. He goes, Bob, because we didn't tell Joey I was going to be there. We were going to bunk together for the night, and it was like old times. Joey's one of the nicest people I ever met. He's just a great guy. And
to his credit, when it was time to walk away from the business, he walked away and never came back.
Yeah, he had his reasons, and that was it. That's it. I admire a guy like that. That's why I admire Cornette so much, Jim Cornette.
Yep.
When something stinks, he won't do it no matter what the money is. That's basically Jim Cornette. That's integrity, my friends. That's rare in this business.
Jim Cornette could have collected a huge paycheck from Tony Khan. Could have been on his payroll for the first 2 or 3 years of AEW and walked away.
Mm-hmm.
That's respect.
Jim Cornette won't do anything that isn't good. And the things he did that you wouldn't think he did, like, did you remember, I think it was the LWPA or Ladies Professional Wrestling Association, where he did commentary there. And I'm like, that was a great show, wasn't it? And why was it good? Because it had Jim Cornette on it. That's why it was a great show. And not to mention that the women were great, but that was the first serious women's wrestling promotion. It worked.
Thank you. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. We had to swallow Glow for all those years. And finally, we had something that had a serious tone to it with good matches and good stars. It was excellent.
Bob, don't you ever just besmirch the good goddamn name of Sally, the farmer's daughter. I was 14, Bob. She helped me come anime.
You know something? I hated Glow, but I loved Tina Ferrari.
And by the way, what a hell of a talent she turned into.
Yes, she did.
What a hell of a talent she turned into.
Miss Moretti is a Hall of Famer, literally, and she deserves to be, because you know what? She went from the outhouse to the penthouse, and she deserved to. She had all the talent. In fact, I can tell you right now that when they were forming the LPWA, or whatever it was called, I got a call from Ken Resnick, who was on that show. And he says, well, I got these Glow people, with these people. You ever hear of Tina Ferrari? I said, hire her.
Yep.
I don't know if that had anything to do with her getting the job, but she did get the job. I just said she was serious. Yeah. She was an athlete.
She earned every accolade. I was there the night she beat the fabulous. I was there in Providence the night she beat the fabulous Moolah for the women's title.
She did? I didn't realize this. Oh, was that when the old Moolah had the title for a few minutes? Is that right?
Yes.
Am I remember this right? Okay.
I think she won the title and forgive me if I'm wrong, she won the title on the pre-show of the Royal Rumble 2003, and the next night in Providence was at Raw, and she loses to Ivory.
Okay. All right. Good memory, my friend.
I was at both of them.
But she was an athlete. She was stunning. She was in such amazing physical shape. She was stunning. And how could I avoid liking her? So, what can I tell you? I'm a guy. What can I say?
My old boss, may he rest in peace, when Glow came to Providence, Rhode Island, he was assigned as Hollywood's bodyguard. He spent 6 hours in a limo with her, just taking her to and from all the clubs in Rhode Island until it was time to show up for the show. They did their show, and he took her back to the airport.
Okay.
Hollywood.
Okay. All right. How do you feel about today's women's wrestling? I think it's awesome. I think the WWE women are fantastic. What do you think?
I'm going to say this right now. I think the best match I saw in 2023 was Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley.
My match of the year. Yes.
The women have they exceeded the men? No. Are they equal to the men? Absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If I were to tell you my top 10 favorite wrestlers in 2023, I guarantee you 4 of them are women, and I will tell you right now, Thunder Rosa, Bayley, Rhea Ripley, and Becky Lynch. There's 4 right there that are my favorite today. They're amazing.
Yeah, Thunder Rosa's great. Yeah.
It's and God, and I remember Thunder Rosa as like the lackey in the NWA in 2019.
Yeah,
she was Melina's like lackey back then. 5 years later, she's incredible.
No, she's fantastic. Best yet to come for her, I still think. Well, she's a real athlete too. She's a legitimate athlete. So
she's done MMA. She could kick both of our butts within 30 seconds.
No question about that.
Yeah.
No question. But no, I think that I'm kind of proud of WWE for the way, if you go back to the Attitude Era, women were, sex bombs and all this other stuff. But now they're equal with the men's. They're attractive, but that's because they're athletic and fit. The sexuality's been stripped from it. And the fans have gravitated to the women's wrestling to the point where you can have it as a main event on a pay-per-view and nobody even looks sideways now. That's the way it is. And that's the way it should be.
Do you recall the match last year between Rhea Ripley and Zelina Vega from Puerto Rico?
Great.
Oh, my God. Bob, I was on a plane to Ireland when that match took place, and I remember cursing the damn airline we lost internet power. Because it was amazing. It was a story. Holy crap.
And how about the applause for Selena after the match?
Oh,
or Zelina,
God.
I should say. And I'll tell you what, that's real. That wasn't scripted. That was legit, and that made it feel really good.
It brought much like when I went to Ric Flair's last match in Nashville, it brought a tear to my eye.
Okay, let me ask you. Okay, I didn't know you were there. You see, this fellow is everywhere, folks. Anthony has been everywhere and does everything. Let me ask you about that match. What was your overall feeling about that whole event?
Okay, are we talking the event or the match?
Both.
The event was beautiful. I will say right now, Conrad Thompson, who I consider a quasi-friend, did an amazing job promoting that show. Bob, if I could tell you the stars we saw that night in the 11-match card, you'd freak out. We're talking New Japan, WWE, old WCW. I saw the Briscoe brothers versus the Von Erichs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I saw Deonna Purrazzo, Rachel Ellering, and Taya Valkyrie in a 3-way. And yes, okay, let's get to the main event.
Right.
Was it a good match? No. No, it was Ric Flair's. Ric Flair was 74 years old. But was it something for me as a Ric Flair mark from 1982 to see him one last time in the ring? It did my heart so good. And by the way, the referee that called the pinfall, Dave Miller, friend of mine. So one of the tears I shed that night was for him, because I know what a Ric Flair fan he was, and he got to deliver the 3 count in the final match. The match was it good? No, the match was not good whatsoever. But in 2022, Bob, I got to see my hero have one last moment in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't buy that. You cannot buy that. So F you, Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer for naming that worst match of 2022. I was there. there were tears shed because real fans understood what that night meant to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, let me ask you one question about the match, though.
Go
Do
ahead.
you think he went too far? Do you think he worked too hard? Do you think that a lot of what he did was necessary?
You know what? I hate to say this. This is going to be awful. Remember the movie The Wrestler?
Yeah.
Okay. We assume that Randy the Ram died in the ring. Correct?
Okay. That's a fair assumption, sure.
If Flair would have died in the ring that night, he'd have been happy. And yes, I would have bawled my eyes out. I probably would have driven to Charlotte for his funeral. But there's a part of Anthony Pires that would have been thrilled that he died the way he wanted to. So if he went too far, good for him. If he went too far and tried to give the fans everything that he could give them, God bless him. I'm in his corner all the way.
There you go. Well, that's a unique perspective on a much talked about match. I mean, and I will say, boy, what a success that was! Holy smokes! And it's very rare to put out something like that to have it go over the way it did.
There were 7,000 people in the building that night, and a lot of my friends were backstage producing the show, and it was magic. I know people crap on the match. F them. F everybody that complains about it. But it was for a fan like me who was 9 years old when he first saw the Ric Flair versus the Von Erichs and Ric Flair versus Harley race on TBS. It meant everything to me. It meant everything to me.
There you go.
I was thrilled to be there.
There you go. Very heartening to hear something like that. Now, let's talk about you a little bit. You're, from what I see of you, you're a great family guy. You're great. You're great in your community. The wrestling community loves you. I'm sure the Patriots love you. You know, just down the line. And you're also very funny, as evidenced by the audio clip I played of you doing Joe McHugh. So.
You know what? I know you and I, Joe McHugh means a lot to you and me both. And I did one hell of a Joe McHugh impersonation back when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So when I met you and I start following, like, I got to do something for Bob. So I've got to do Joe McHugh.
Well, I'll tell you what, interviewing him on TV ranks as one of my great moments. In fact, if it hadn't even been on television, just talking to him ranks as one of my great moments, because that was the voice of our childhoods, right?
Yep. And God, you know what? To me, Joe, my Mount Rushmore of ring announcers are Joe McHugh, obviously Howard Finkel, Truck and Tom Miller, and I hate to say it, Mark Lawrence back from World Class Championship Wrestling.
Yes, I agree.
Joe McHugh, yeah.
Mark Lawrence is the most underrated guy. He did a call once for Abdullah the Butcher versus Bruiser Brody. It's one of the greatest TV matches I've ever heard announced. Just for his, do you know the match I'm talking about?
I don't know.
They're running all over the place, and they go behind the door, and then he comes out with a club beating him, and it ended up in a obviously a double DQ. Gary Hart was involved. Unbelievably great job.
The one time World Class Championship Wrestling came to Providence, Rhode Island, I was there, obviously. Bruiser versus Abdullah. I was in section like 201, and there were maybe 500 people there. They fought right next to me. Wow. And I took my World Class program, and I touched Abdullah's head. So somewhere in my garage, there was a World Class program with Abdullah's blood on it.
People don't. I'm glad you made that point, because people don't realize for a while World Class was up on the East Coast. They were being shown. Yes. They were shown in Albany, and I went to Albany, New York, and saw a card there. And one of the main events was Abby versus Kevin Von Erich.
If World Class had come to Providence 2 years earlier, they would have sold the place out. They could have kept coming month after month after month, but unfortunately, they pulled the trigger too late and came here after the deaths. When Mike Von Erich was out sick, David Henry died, Kerry had his accident. The only Von Erich I saw was Kevin against the Dingo Warrior.
That's right.
Imagine that.
Dingo started as a heel. That's right.
Yep. Kevin Von Erich versus the Dingo. The main event, Chris Adams versus Rick Rude.
How'd you feel about the Iron Claw?
Oh, it was, you know what? I knew going in that it was going to be not true to the timeline. But I'm sure you and I both know the timeline.
We know the timeline. It wasn't even close to the timeline.
Kerry Von Erich did not lose his foot the night he won the world title. But what a sad story.
Yeah.
What a beautifully done movie, but what a sad story.
You see, here's the thing, too. I take issue with certain wrestling fans who were expecting imitations of the wrestlers. I don't think it was necessary. You know, Kerry's too short. Kevin is too muscular. The Ric Flair sucks. He doesn't look like Ric Flair. He doesn't sound like him. Folks, nobody looks and sounds like Ric Flair. You could not cast Ric Flair.
Bob, who the hell could be Ric Flair besides Ric Flair?
That's exactly right. It's the point I'm making. This wasn't a recreation of history. It was a dramatic depiction of the lives of real human beings. That was the intent on this movie. I thought it was a fantastic movie. Of course you did.
I cried twice when David died at the very end.
Yeah.
Because bear in mind, 11-year-old me, I was watching World Class the morning in February 1984 when Bill Mercer came on saying, today is not going to be a regular show, folks. This is going to be a tribute to the life of David Von Erich. And stupid me, 11-year-old me thought it was a story. I didn't believe it. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that I literally called news stations in Texas. Now, bear in mind, this was 1984. You had to hit 411 and ask for hey, Dallas, can I have a news station up there? I literally had 11-year-old me talk to a reporter up in Dallas, Texas, who confirmed David Von Erich's death. I didn't think it was real. And I bawled my eyes out back then. I bawled my eyes out twice during the Iron Claw.
Well, there's the thing. It's a movie, like I say, not a recreation. And I thought they did a great job with the wrestling in the film. It looked real. It looked like a real wrestling matches. I love the way that they would show the same fonts that they used to show in the World Class show. And it looked like the Sportatorium. They did a great job recreating the Sportatorium and so on and so forth. I thought it was a very fine movie. I understand why they cut things out. I don't agree with a couple of the cuts. How Chris Von Erich doesn't even get mentioned is beyond me. I don't get that. They didn't have to feature him, but by the same token, how can you leave it out entirely? I just don't get it.
For the purpose of a 2-hour movie, it's almost too much for a moviegoer to bear. 3 sons died in the movie. Mm-hmm. For a 4th die, it might have been just too much.
But I think that's what the director was thinking about it too, and the producers. But I will say this: to see Kevin Von Erich with his sons and his life now in Hawaii, he seems happy. He seems well adjusted. That's the end result. He was able to shrug off all these horrible things and rebuild his life, and that's the end of the film. And if you know anything about Kevin, I think that's his life. Isn't that great?
And the part that killed me was that last line.
Right.
For my whole life, I had 5 brothers. Now I'm not even a brother.
How does it not get to you?
If that does not at least choke you up. And that made 51-year-old Anthony, who watched World Class, that made me bawl my eyes out, buddy.
Right. I think it was a fine film. And if some wrestling fans take issue with the things that were omitted and the timelines, I understand that too. But for me, it was well worth seeing. I'll tell you that much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you're well worth knowing, my friend. Tell people how they can find you on the interwebs and social media and whatnot.
Find me at Facebook. I'm known as Anthony Pires on Facebook.
Spell Pires.
P as in Peter, I, R as in Robert, E, S as in Sam, Anthony Pires, Pires. The only Anthony Pires you will find on Facebook. rather the only Anthony Pires worth talking to on Twitter or Twitter/X, or as Eric Bischoff calls it, Twix. I am at Hoboken_Cobbler, or that's Mr. Porky to you. I love talking wrestling. I love talking Patriots. I love talking music. And that's all my social media right now. But if you want to support me, go to ProWrestlingTees.com. Go to PW Insider, the PW Insider page, and buy the AEW official post-show party t-shirt. Me and Corey Strode, every Wednesday night at midnight, we break down AEW Dynamite like only real men can.
I will tell you this right now, my friend. As a thank you to you for coming on my meager little podcast, I'm buying a t-shirt.
Yes!
I am telling you, I'm buying a t-shirt. And when I tell you something, you can take it to the bank, all right? Because I bought a Scotty Richardson t-shirt from Wrestler Weekly, and he said, "You really bought it?" I said, "It did." And then I showed it to him. He goes, "Oh my God, you did it!" So I'm buying your t-shirt. You know, I've seen the shirt. It's funny. The shirt's as funny as you are. So I need to own this.
When can I buy a Bob Smith t-shirt?
You know something? I was gifted 2 double X size Outdated Wrestling Hour t-shirts with the logo on that you see when you tune in on the front, and I'm considering selling them at Pro Wrestling Tees myself.
Because men, a little PSA, men, I know there's Viagra out there. I know there's female Viagra, but if you wear a t-shirt with Bob Smith's face on it, your wives will find you sexier and more desirable. You will score more than Wayne Gretzky in 1982. Telling you right now.
If you wear a t-shirt with Bob Smith's face on it, it's a female repellent, my friends. Don't believe a thing he's saying. This is like raid for dating. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's like a mousetrap. Just don't even consider wearing it as in mixed public. My goodness, what are you thinking, Anthony?
I want to buy this shirt, damn it.
We'll see if I can mass produce these. The whole idea makes me laugh. And you know what? Another thing I don't particularly like, I went on YouTube with this podcast. I just threw it there because I had an opportunity to put it on there, right? The audio show is on there. And unlike Jim Cornette, who I love the little Travis's art on the beginning. Fantastic. Travis is the best, right? So I can't do that either. I don't want to cop somebody else's idea. So I just put our placard on there. Bang. The same thing you see when and I can't imagine somebody enjoying it with my face staring at them for the whole 90 minutes of the show. It's like, ugh.
I love the Bob Smith face. God, come on, man.
Hey, for my age, I'm doing all right, you know.
But you and me both.
Then again, for my age. I mean, I'm older than Brill Cream, man. I'm telling you, it's just there's not much left here. I have a problem with my left foot now. I have some kind of a pronation in my left foot, and I'm limping around. I've had a walking boot on recently and stuff. So it's just the old man aches and pains are coming in, man. It's tough.
You played music with B.B. King. How many people can say that?
Well, that's a good point. You know what? I've never been rich, but I've had a charmed life, man. You know why? Because I've had good people in my life, and I've had great experiences. And one of my favorite wrestling experiences of the last 2 years in podcasting is meeting you, my friend. I'm serious.
Oh,
I value your friendship. We're going to have to get together in real time sometime because it's like we need to do this.
The fact that I'm talking to the managing editor of my childhood is freakish to me. So, Bob, I love you. And I say hello to all the listeners. Subscribe, leave those 5-star reviews because Bob Smith is worth every moment of your time.
Thank you. Your money order's in the mail. Only an old man would say money order. right? I'm not sending it to you on my phone. I need a money order. I got to go to Walmart and buy a money order to give you $50.
The three kids listening is like, what's a money order? What's your Venmo?
Oh, I had Kimmy Sok on there. I was joking with her. I said, we used to have to put our finger in a dial to make a phone call, and each number we'd have to spin it. I was actually explaining it, and she's looking at me with saucer eyes going, really?
If you talk to Kimmy before I do, please tell her how much I love her work.
Yes, you know what? She's going to be a big deal, isn't she?
Yep.
She is. She's going to be a big deal in wrestling.
she filled in for me and Corey when we were both at out of commission for a Dynamite. She did amazing. She does the Ring of Honor report. She's great. Love her.
She's a natural. You know why she's a natural? Because she loves it the same way you and I did when we were 11 years old discovering this stuff, right?
And I still love it like I did when I was 11.
I like hearing it. It's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Pires, he's one of a kind, the one and only. Thank you for being here again. And you'll come back soon?
Oh, God. I'll be back next week if you want me.
I might need you. Stay by your phone.
Bob, anytime you want me, I'm here. Go talk right. Whatever.
You got it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Pires. Okay, everybody. Before we begin our usual end-of-week pleasantries, I just want to make note of the fact that last fall I warned people that every so often I would take a week off. Not often. Just when things get really hairy on this end and we record a whole mess of shows in a small amount of time, leaving me spent, as it were. So in this case, we are going to take next week off. We will have no show on the 23rd of February. We will be back hale and hearty on March 1st. So don't think there's anything wrong. We're just taking 1 week hiatus on the 23rd of February. We will be back, bright and bushy-tailed, on March 1st. So please join us again at that time. I told you that was going to be kind of ginchy, right? Well, that's Anthony Pires. He's a gadabout. You'll find him. Just go look for him. He's doing a whole mess of stuff, and he's nothing but fun. Nothing but a pure pleasure of a guy. I do want to meet him in person. I want to meet him face-to-face, and we'll share a beer and just discuss the old days, you know what I mean? But in any event, that's our show for this time. We got a lot of special stuff coming up in the weeks ahead. First, let's roll the credits. Our theme song. Hold on a sec. Performed by the great guitarist Brian Tio. If you want to write to us about the meanderings of this wonderful podcast, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our official website is Outdated Wrestling. Buzzsprout. .com, where for a nominal fee you can join the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club, which will help perpetuate the show, allow you to participate in Zoom and other meetings that we have, maybe even win a valuable prize while you do that, and be first to know all the news and stuff. And I'm actually thinking of putting out some content for our fan club members. So look forward to that. We have a really special couple of shows coming up. But in any event, this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We hope you're having fun. Things have been going so good here. I want to thank each and every one of you for, I don't know, from October on, things are really going great. It's been going great from the beginning, but just the last few months have been absolutely spectacular for all of us here who work so hard to put this out. So in any event, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for every listener that we have. And if you like it, tell your friends. I still believe in that. Just tell a pal. I didn't say go on social media. Just walk up to them and say, hey, have you heard this show? I still think word of mouth is key to anything. So if you enjoy it, let your pals know. Fellow veteran fans, you'll get some information here and some memories I don't think you'll find anywhere else. I want you to listen to other podcasts, but I hope you come back to this one. My name's Bob Smith. I used to be with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all those wrestling magazines. Thanks again. And as we segue into the second month of 2024, I wish you continued peace, happiness, prosperity, and all the good stuff. You hear?